Welcome back to Locked On NFL Draft. It's a brand new week, and things are starting to change. Did this weekend set the stage for who is actually in the upper echelon of the quarterback class and who may not be? What happened to Cincinnati on both sides of the ball? What does that mean for this upcoming draft? And a couple of wide receivers that we got to start talking about. Welcome into a brand new week. This is Locked On NFL Draft.
You are Locked On NFL Draft, your daily podcast covering the NFL Draft. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to another episode of Locked On NFL Draft. I'm your host, former NFL and NFL defensive back Eric Crocker, and as always, joined by my co-host, Ryan Tracy. Ryan, how you doing?
Hey. It's getting down to that time, right? It's cold and it feels like football weather.
Yeah, man. I went to a couple of high school football games, and it was freezing cold. I was all layered up, had the hot hands, and watching some really cool young kids, the future of college football. But there were a couple of quarterbacks, and you had Malik Willis against Matt Corral, and trying to see what guys are going to separate themselves in this class. They got a chance to play against each other. All right, and what was one of your just kind of takeaways immediately just from watching that game?
For me, it's about how you rise to the occasion or don't, really.
Yeah.
And I know for Liberty, this is, as a team, this is not the same structure, right? You're facing a high-end conference defense versus, some journeymen, right? So you can't say it's apples to apples, but here's the key. These two guys are talked about in the same breath, and that is Matt Corral and Malik Willis in terms of being in that upper echelon, that day one possibles, definitely top 100 type quarterbacks, right? And so even though you, as Malik Willis, you have the higher obstacle to climb in that defense that you're facing, it's about, can you raise your game? And clearly, I think these two guys went in total opposite directions and really gave away that who should be in that top echelon and who should be a day two guy.
Yeah, it was tough because going into it, that was my thought process where it's like, gosh, you have Malik Willis, and his team is definitely overmatched, right? From just a talent perspective, you have an SEC team against Liberty, right? Not really fair. But for me, it was more so about just what it looks like and what NFL things do I see Malik Willis do on a consistent basis. And I thought that I didn't see that, right? Like, he got sacked a ton of times. I think really just in the first 17 or 18 minutes of the game, he had been sacked already 5 times. And a lot of it, I thought, was from him trying to play hero ball. There was one play early on. And again, these are things that you can be taught, and you can teach or coach these things out of him. But he had rolled out right, and he's scrambling around, I'm like, okay, throw the ball away. And he didn't. He tried to make, 5 guys miss. And it's that's not going to happen. And he ends up getting sacked for a 10-yard loss and kind of putting them behind. And that wasn't even a third down play. It was first or second down. So those were things where I'm like, okay, definitely his clock is a little sped up. I thought he definitely could have did better at the anticipation throws. Mm-hmm. And I remember listening to Kyle Shanahan talk about quarterbacks. This was 2017, and he was talking about CJ Beathard. But one thing that he, talked about as far as completion percentage, he didn't really care so much about completion percentage that's high because there's so many manufactured completions in college football. It's the NFL throws that you're able to make and, just the timing in which you do it. So I was watching him throw Malik Willis throw an out route, and he was late, and it ended up being, the receiver got hit, the ball ended up popping out of his hands. Instead of dropping back and understanding, okay, he's going to make his break, I'm going to get this ball out, he puts it on him. Now his receiver has a chance to catch the ball and turn upfield. But him late and having to see it open before he throws it, I thought that was an issue there. And I thought that was an issue throughout this game that made it more difficult, right? Your offensive line is already overmatched, and you are struggling to really throw with that anticipation and see things before it happens. And maybe this was one of the first times that he's had to do that because the teams that he plays against, Liberty is usually as good or if not better. But when you play against a team that's better than you, and now you have to face a little bit more adversity, what does that clock look like? What does it look like on the field? And I think from that standpoint for him, he didn't pass the test with that. But again, I understand the circumstances. His team is overmatched, but I didn't think he really helped. As a matter of fact, I thought his running backs helped more than anything with Mac. And I can't even think about the other kid's name, but number one, I thought those guys were really good, but I thought Malik Willis, I didn't think he helped as much as he could have.
That I would same thing in my notes. Just run the ball more, help the kid out, right? Because I wanted to see him, like you said, on NFL type throws. And I wonder what Kyle Shanahan would say today if the NFL has drifted more towards the college game and maybe completion percentage is a more important stat than it used to be 5 years ago, right? Because I know I track it more and more because of what the NFL is stealing. But for Willis, it was an opportunity to punch above your weight and make yourself stand out, right? And it's one thing to try and extend a play because you have something cooking. It's another thing to just really run around for your life because you're trying to make a play rather than being smart about it. And I think NFL scouts definitely make a differentiation between he's a smart guy who's taking what's there and protecting his team by not throwing the ball up for grabs a couple of times. And this was just a mismatch all the way around. I think he hurt his stock on the other side. I think Corral looked, for those who are saying, oh, he uses his legs too much, this was kind of a turnaround for him too, wasn't it?
Yeah, I thought he threw the ball well. There were a couple of times where he threw the ball downfield. One, it ended up being kind of this kind of like I don't want to call it jump ball, but it was contested. They had two guys there. His receiver ended up coming down with it, but it was good to see him just air it out, right, and give his receiver an opportunity. Put the ball in the area where his receiver could potentially make a play, and the ball traveled over 55 yards in the air. So that was one thing where, if you have any questions about his arm strength, that should have answered it. Him being able to throw the ball downfield, be comfortable, let it rip, and put it in a place where his receiver can get a ball. Catch it. I thought that was tremendous. So I saw that one. There was another one early in the game down the right sideline that he threw, and another terrific ball. Hit his receiver in stride, big gain, and he just really looked comfortable pushing the ball downfield, and not just pushing the ball downfield. I thought on intermediate throws, he came out. You could tell he had to settle down, threw a few hot, threw some high, missed some throws. There was one where he had a window to the right, and he threw it like behind his receiver, where it was a big open area. He had all the space in the world to be able to throw it to where his receiver caught it and ran, but he threw it behind him. The receiver tried to adjust and ended up dropping it, but I thought he recovered well. He settled down well. And I thought he made a lot of throws that you would like to see him. Even some of the short, quick game stuff, I thought he did well with that as well.
He solidified himself up there at the top, right?
I think so. It's trending that way. And I don't know if we've talked about this class with Rob Rang. Mm-hmm. It's not a great class, right? I don't know if we're going to have just the high profile guys. So, yes, I believe Matt Corral is kind of solidifying himself at the top and kind of separating him from some of the other guys in this class. But what does that really mean when it's like, Rob has him, what was it, the 20th overall prospect? Uh-huh. And there's some people and some scouts that might even have him lower on their board. So that's a tough thing we're going to have to try to figure out down the line. Like, is he the QB1 because the rest of the class isn't great? And where would he stack up in like last year's class? And I think you have to kind of view it from that standpoint.
And him and Pickett clearly seem to be the two that are separating themselves. But where they fall is completely independent of the fact that your QB is 1, 2, or 3, right? There's another QB that I think we have to talk about him and his defense. They had a big game. We'll talk about Cincinnati coming up next.
All right, guys, does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch the game live. You have another one that lets you stream your favorite shows, and you're watching your sports highlights on your phone. If you got your neighbors, best friends, log in for all this good stuff. Well, I want you to know that there's a much simpler way to go about your entertainment that you love without the hassle, and it's a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called DirecTV Stream, and it brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like you've never seen before. So you can watch all your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. And the best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of all the clutter that you have and the confusion and get your TV together with DirecTV Stream. You can learn more about DirecTV Stream by going to directtv.com. That's directtv.com. Compatible devices required. Content varies by the package.
Okay, I've been looking forward to this one because this game irks me. I realize everyone in Cincinnati is all frustrated. Number 6 in the college playoff rankings, right? So let's go out and prove it then. Let's go take it out on somebody, that is probably overmatched as well, like Tulsa. But no, you don't. I don't know if I've been more disappointed in somebody that had a reason to play hard and wasn't able to pull it off in anybody else this season. Like this frustrated me. How do you feel about A, Ritter, but B, the whole team, including all the defensive projects?
Well, that's been the issue, right? And the college football playoff rankings came out and they had Cincinnati down, and there were people like, oh man, they should be higher. They're undefeated. And it's like, we've talked about on the show, like, I don't think they're in the same caliber as some of these other programs that are at the top or have played more competition, week in and week out. And Cincinnati in the games, aside from always bring up the Notre Dame game. They did play well there. Mm-hmm. They did win that game. But the other games, they have been like very underwhelming. And I thought this was another one that could have easily went the other way and resulted in a loss.
What if 4 downs? It could have gone the other way, right?
Typically, when you have the quarterback that is definitely more dominant, that quarterback is able to kind of elevate the team. And not just him. I mean, I think Cincinnati just in general is better. We're going to talk about some of their defensive guys, but they just have the better team. Mm-hmm. But for some reason, they continue to get in these tight games. And I can't help but look at the quarterback and think, who are you? Because, a better quarterback just, makes all the plays, makes the throws, runs with his legs, does these things. And all the things he's definitely capable of doing, but he's not doing it consistently enough throughout games, or at least doing it to the point where it's game-changing plays to separate him. I mean, we just talked about Matt Corral against Malik Willis. And, even looking at that game, like Corral made enough plays, made enough throws, even taking off a couple times with his legs, like to really kind of separate that gap and have a defense that's doing their part too. Cincinnati has some of the same structure, but it's just not working out that way. And I have to look at the quarterback who's not helping take this team over the top. We talked about this quarterback class. Well, where is Ritter going to stand with everybody?
Exactly. Like maybe a week ago, I might have said he's in that top 3. Maybe he could separate himself. But this is bothersome for me because you can make whatever complaints you want. And I'm just looking at the end of the play call sheet, right? So the last 3 drives, downs, fumble, end of game. So this tells you how futile this game was at the end for both teams. But it comes down to this. You're trying to, if you're Desmond Ritter, make that statement that I deserve to be in the conversation at the top of the draft class for the quarterback, most important position in the NFL. But on a play call that requires me not to take a step back and deal because they're on like the 2-yard line, I believe is where it was spotted when they took this, that you just have to move forward. You can still hit your knee, but when you cough up a ball on your own 2-yard line, giving the other team 4 downs to take this game from you, that is one of those things that at the back of my mind, I always leave a note that can he perform under the harshest conditions? Can he be the guy that no matter what will not give his game up on his back? And I don't know that I can say that about him anymore. I think this hurt his stock, at least in my mind. This is going to be a big asterisk on his evaluation. I don't know about the rest of the league. How big a deal is it to you?
I mean, it's a big thing because you want to see him elevate his team, elevate that roster. And I think that's the part where you're the one guy that has the opportunity to do it and has all the ability, but it's just something about it is not clicking. And again, you see the arm, you see the athleticism, you see the height, you see all the things that are going to be intriguing to pro scouts. But on the field, I don't think it's been dominant enough, right? You look at, some of these quarterbacks, look at, a Carson Wentz or even like a Trey Lance that come from a smaller, program in the sense of, FCS level, whatever. But they dominated their opponents, right? Like when they had to, like they did that. They dominated. They put their team over the top, and that's why they ended up winning national titles, as well as their teams just being good in general for that level. I'm not seeing the same dominance from Ritter. So yeah, that's a little worrisome.
Yeah, I mean, and on the other side, you put your defense in a bad spot, right? 2-yard line. What do? They bow up and they show up and keep that game from getting away from them. A couple of guys that stood out. Jai Sanders led in pressures. I want to see a little bit more from him. I thought maybe he would be able to climb through this season as well. I don't see him as a top tier at this point, but as a defensive end, I think he's providing pressure. And the guy that still stands out is Ahmad Gardner, right?
Sauce Gardner.
Right. That's not, and I'm trying to, I can't remember everybody's nicknames at this point. There's too many. Smoke sauce, whatever. It sounds like barbecue to me. But at the end of the day, you got to have guys that stand out, right? And that helps. I thought Deshaun Pace played pretty good, but a couple of key moments was there along with Brooks, another one of their tackles. Like, I thought this said more this game about the defensive prospects than necessarily did about Ritter.
Right. And I mean, their defense, that was part of the reason why people really like Cincinnati even last year, right? Going into the college football playoffs, having to play against Georgia, and people were like, oh, no, or not playoffs, but the college football bowl games. Mm-hmm. And they were like, oh, well, Cincinnati might have a chance because of the defense, right? I mean, like, yeah, they have Ritter, but you look at the safeties that they have, you look at the corners, you look at, Kobe Bryant, and obviously Sauce Gardner, like you mentioned, and defensive line. Like, they have a lot of good prospects, but need that quarterback take them over the top. And we'll see how this season closes out. But right now, underwhelming win, and that's why they're not as high as they should be in the college football playoff rankings.
Absolutely. There are rankings that are out there that we're going to start to get into in the offseason, and a couple of quiet names, guys, that we probably should be talking about more on the wide receiver spot. We're getting into what Eric saw here coming up next.
All right, guys, if you haven't tried Built Bar by now, you are missing out. They say it's a protein bar, but it doesn't really taste like one. You have to try one of these amazing bars for yourself to believe it. Most protein bars are chalky or waxy and just plain hard to kind of eat down. And a Built Bar, it's soft, it's covered in 100% real chocolate. And when you bite into it, you are eating into something that's different. It just tastes so good. It's a great experience, to be honest, one that you'll definitely enjoy. In fact, you'll swear you're eating a candy bar. Built Bars are low in carb, low in calories, low fat, low sugar, and high in protein. So all the healthy benefits on top of just being purely delicious with so many flavors. Another great thing about Built Bar is there are so many mouth-watering flavors, including coconut, raspberry, mint brownie, my favorite, and my wife's favorite, salted caramel. You have the double chocolate. My daughter loves that, and cherry barcia. So this month, Built Bar is coming out with a new limited flavor every 3 to 4 days. So check back to their website early and often so you don't miss out on everything that they have coming out. The offer is go to built.com, use promo code LOCKED15, and you'll get 15% off on your order. All right, that's use promo code LOCK15 for 15% off at built.com. All right, guys, we are back and better than ever with a new web interface for the start of basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all your basketball and football action this season. So head over right now to our updated desktop and mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. And how do you get this? Just use our promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, to NHL, boxing, UFC, and your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of these amazing offers throughout the 2021 season. So BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. It's BetOnline, where the games start.
All right, so I got to tell you, I didn't get to see all the games this weekend. A couple of standouts you can take from the score sheet, but I want to know who stood out to you at the wide receiver group that I still feel is pretty open here, especially with the injury to Drake out at USC.
Yeah, so we haven't talked about this guy. I'm not even sure we've mentioned him, but Jahan Dotson, the receiver out of Penn State. And I don't want to just kind of jump on that bandwagon because he did have a massive game against Maryland, 11 catches, 242 yards, and 3 touchdowns. But while watching him and just seeing, the boxes that he checks, it was really cool to see. You're talking about someone who definitely has enough size, right? On film, on the field, not like he looks like this tiny receiver, but just the explosive ability, the big play guy. And again, that's something that, NFL teams have always coveted. Watching him, there was one play where he kind of came off the line from the right side, and it was like he was like kind of just finding that open area, then kind of lull the defense to sleep, and then boom, he hit it right up the seam. The quarterback threw the ball, boom, on the money. But that wasn't the best part about it. The best part to me, because that was like kind of like one of those schemed up things. So even like, when you're evaluating a prospect, you kind of take out like what's schemed up, what's not. You want to look at just the pure ability. And on that play, from a pure ability standpoint, him catching the ball and how he separated from everybody that had angles from him. I said, this guy has some burners. This guy has some jets. That's something that's going to be definitely intriguing to the NFL prospects. So He scored another touchdown where I thought he did a really good job of setting the defensive back up with patience. You had a guy who was playing off and was reading too. So it's probably kind of maybe a cover 4 or some type of kind of cloud coverage, cover 4. You could tell that the corner was often reading too from kind of like this shuffle. And Dotson did a terrific job of getting into the cornerback's blind spot. And right as the corner got his eyes to Dotson, Dotson came back this way. And just made it look easy. So everybody's going to look at that play and they're going to be like, oh, the corner, he was just so bad. But no, I thought the receiver did a really good job of setting it up with patience, hitting it with just enough speed, and being able to get into the cornerback's blind spot and then cross his face for an easy touchdown. This dude is smooth. He's electric. His hands, I think, are probably something that will give a little bit of worry to some scouts. That part of it has to improve. But I've always said it, and I say it with receivers, right? Terrell Owens, he was a guy who sometimes would lead the league in drops, or like a Des Bryant, right? He'd have his drops. But if you are a guy that's going to make big time plays and you're going to have 11 catches for 242 yards and 3 touchdowns, I can live with a drop here and there because you have that ability to overcome that and really make up for it. So big time prospect, Jahan Dotson, that's a guy, and we'll get more in depth with just his overall skill set. But so far, especially with yesterday, there was a lot to like.
Well, and for me, he has 2 of those things that you mentioned. A, knowing how to attack a player, how to work that CB in front of you, right? How to get him turned and then take advantage of it instantly. That's something that takes experience. It takes understanding angles on that DB. But the thing for me, especially when I look at what happens at the next level, is can you be dynamic within your route or within your assignment necessarily if you're the backside receiver or whatever it is. And that ability to, like you said, play at speed, but then still have that extra gear, that accelerate away, is the difference maker at the next level for guys like Tyreek Hill. That is one of those things that when you can hit that gear, that will separate you, not just on the field, but it'll separate you from other receivers. And I think this was another demonstration of what he can be over the top end. Again, more positives than the negatives on the drops, right?
Right. And we talked about, just another receiver that has that big playability. And this is a guy, I think, because he transferred from Ohio State, and he comes to Alabama, and everybody's thinking, oh, John Mechie, like that's the guy. And all of a sudden, this guy, Jameson Williams, he is killing it. Yesterday, he went off with 10 catches, 160 yards, and a touchdown. But he's a guy who's definitely taking advantage of this opportunity. He showed everything. They look to get him the ball every which way. And again, they have Mechie, and Mechie isn't like a non-factor. He had 9 catches for like 70 yards. But Williams has been the guy. And when they need their young quarterback, Bryce Young, to lean on somebody, is him. He works, and I like this about him. He works every level of the field extremely well, whether it's behind the line of scrimmage, the short to intermediate routes, that kind of 10 to 20-yard range, as well as the vertical threat. He's showing all that. He's showing to be electric. He's showing to be dependable. He's the other guy. He's kind of carrying that offense a little bit and making it be more explosive. But, you got Jameson Williams. He's a guy who's, again, not being really talked up a lot. And I think maybe it's because he, the breakout thing. And I know a lot of people look at breakout age, when a guy has his big year. He's a junior, but he's definitely having his big year right now. He's standing out big time.
Yeah, he's a guy that I think is pushing right now to make himself maybe the better prospect in some teams' eyes, the ones that are looking for the over-the-top aspect of it. Do you think that, well, let me say it this way. I feel that he wouldn't be having this kind of explosive season if it wasn't for Mechie being on the field as well. I think you have to give credit to the guy that is drawing attention, that has been on the film before, right? But what does this do to Mechie's stock in your mind?
I think it pushes him down. Now, we've seen, these scouts, if you're just talented and you have all the ability, then they're not going to care, right? You look at the numbers for Mechie as opposed to Williams, and Mechie's numbers, they're not up there. Mechie averaging 11 yards per catch, while Williams is averaging 19 yards per reception. So you see, just one player is definitely looking more explosive. But we also saw a couple years ago Henry Ruggs, and we know everything that he's going through his situation. But Henry Ruggs coming out, he was the prospect that he wasn't nearly as productive as Jerry Jeudy, as Devontae Smith, but he was the first guy taken in the class of receivers, even in that class, that were way more productive in college, right? You had, like I said, Jerry Jeudy, CeeDee Lamb, Justin Jefferson, Michael Pittman, T. Higgins. The list goes on and on of all these guys that had high level production. He didn't have that, but he still went high. So when you look at Mechie and maybe him kind of taking the back seat, I'm not saying he's going to do that, because Ruggs had one thing, and there's that pure speed, right? That game-breaking speed that kind of shot him up the charts. But I do think, regardless of, Williams potentially being the better prospect, he'll still get those looks because he's a good receiver as well. Just not as explosive as Williams.
Right. And that seems to be what teams are looking for now, because they are taking chances on guys like Ruggs. And that over the top thing is what's stretching, especially as we see more cover 2, cover 4 defenses in the league. That may be lending itself towards what can you do to break that apart. Speed is one of those things that'll always help. So that's it for us today, folks. I hope you are feeling good about where this college season is. We're getting to the point where we can start really breaking down these prospects and getting a feel for not just where they've been, but where they're going at this point. We'll have more for you tomorrow. Croc, that was a pretty good weekend of college ball, wasn't it?
Definitely was. Now it's time to watch some of these NFL games.
Yeah. Thank you, folks. You all have a great day. We will talk to you tomorrow.